Hi guys, this is Rick from Vortex-RC. Welcome to another video. You might remember that Let's Build a Plane series I had going a few months back. Well, this is part 11. This is the final part. I've actually completed the aircraft, and have I got a story to tell you. I think you'll remember the last video on this was part 10, where I showed you the hinge wing. Well, since that time, apart from other things I've been involved with, I have discovered that this plane is tail heavy, well beyond expectation. Now, the Australian foam board we use, or that I use, I'm afraid didn't help or doesn't help, but thankfully I've been able to show you in a previous video that by removing the paper off the foam board, I can halve the overall weight of the structure easily. And I think you can see in the background there that the underside of that yellow wing, which was one of the previous videos I showed you, which was my experimental flight test wing, or my Experimental Airlines flight test wing. But anyway, the foam board and the materials you use are extremely important, especially how you use them also. So I've got a plane, it's finished, I've got lots of footage coming up, you're going to see what I've done to it. The overall plane ended up weighing 1450 plus grams, which is not very lightweight in my books. The original Axon from Experimental Airlines was about 700 grams, and it was based around a 2200 kilovolt motor, pulling turning, if you like, a 6x4 prop. Well, there's no way I'm going to hand launch this plane with that motor. It's just double the weight, and I'm sure the flight characteristics rather are going to be too spongy, and I will probably struggle to keep this flying adequately, if you like. So I'm going to probably swap out the motor and use a 1400 kilovolt motor, or even a 1000 kilovolt motor with a larger size prop. Now, the only challenge I have there is that the larger size prop, if I use an 8x6 or an 8x4 or an 8x5 or whatever, actually scrapes the top side of the fuselage. So I have to switch to a 3-bladed prop. The other thing I didn't want to have to do was switch to a 4S battery. This plane was designed around a 3S battery. So I've got a couple of other things to consider before I just swap things out. I'm sure if I use a bigger battery, I'm going to readjust the CG again, and it may end up being nose heavy after all that effort I had in getting rid of the tail heaviness. So back on the CG component of this whole build, I was struggling with tail heaviness. So I redesigned the front, I moved the power pod back. The front section of the aircraft was completely redesigned. I've got footage of that. And then in the very end, I still ended up making one more change, and I kept the front design according to my original design spec. So this is a modification of the Experimental Airlines Axon. I just wanted to change its shape slightly to make it my own, and that's what I've done. So you can probably see a brief glimpse of it at the background, or in the background at the moment, but I've got complete footage of the whole aircraft coming up and what I went through to actually change the tail heaviness of this aircraft. It's basically ready to fly now. So it's been an outstanding journey. You learn a lot from scratch building. I must admit, look, I have been flying helis for the last 10 years, nothing but helis. And my previous flight experience with airplanes was nitro, not electric. So this has been a fantastic journey for me, and I'm sure your scratch building experiences have many, many stories to tell also. So please, once you see this, as you see this, drop your comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to have a chat. And thanks for being patient. Thanks for tuning in once again. This is the final part in this Let's Build a Plane series. It's coming up next, and thanks for watching. Okay guys, so as I mentioned in my intro, I need to do a redesign at the 11th hour of this build. Now all I really have to do, which is what I thought I was going to show you, was install the electronics, get the CG right, and she was going to be ready to fly. But all is not what it seems, and I'm about to show you why. So this is how she balances currently. Right, so I've got the motor in place down there. It's not bolted up here, but it's where it's going to be. If I lift this up directly under the carbon spar, this is what happens. So this Raven, my Axon derivative, whatever you want to call it, it's as tail heavy as the Ayatollah. Look at that. It's just too heavy. It's not even a little bit. It's just too much. So there's no way I'm going to fly it like this. And I have to make some adjustments. I don't want to redesign or remake the fuselage. This is my design. I'm going to stick with it, but I'm going to get creative and I'm going to show you how. Now, before I do that, I'm going to show you how much weight I need at the front so that this balances the way it should, ready for flight, and you're going to be quite surprised. So I'll just put this down again now like that, and this is just for the example's sake. So I'm going to add another battery at the front, like so. I'm not really going to add it to the plane, I'm just showing you how much extra dead weight this needs so the CG is where it's supposed to be. Believe it or not, that battery is not enough. So I'm going to add another battery. This is dead weight, if you remember now, right? Dead third-party weight. I've got 2 extra batteries, and I'm going to throw in another little piece which adds another 45 grams or so in the form of this knife. I'll put it up the top there because I've already done this test. I know what it weighs, I know how much it's going to affect the overall balance. Now watch this. I'm going to pick it up under the carbon spar like I did last time and have a look at the difference. She's completely and utterly balanced. The CG is perfect. This is where I want it. This is where it has to be before I even attempt to fly it. There's only one problem. There's no way I'm going to add this much third-party dead weight to this plane. It's just ridiculous, and I'm going to show you why in a moment. Let's see how much all that extra stuff weighs. So out comes my trusty scale. I'm going to put the knife there. Just switch it back on. Okay, 0. The knife. I'll show you in a moment, but the knife alone weighs 44 grams. If I add the battery, there's now a total of 136 grams. I still have to add one more battery. And there you have it. 259 grams of extra third-party dead weight. Now I know you can't see it, but I'm going to show you the screen on the scales in a moment. But all I'm going to tell you is this. There is no way I'm adding 259 grams of extra weight to the front of this plane so that the CG is right, so that it can fly. I may as well put a motor on the end of a rock if that's what I'm going to try and do by adding this much extra weight. So I'm going to show you right now the scales. Hang on a second. There you have it. The scales never lie. I've got the 2 batteries and the X-Acto knife, which was my additional third-party dead weight on the front of this plane, and all of that totals 259 grams. Now that is absolutely ridiculous. There's no way I'm going to add it. I've already explained that. So now I have to come up with some creative way of making some design changes at the 11th hour of this build. Now I don't want to change too much, but I'm going to work with the front section, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm doing, how I did it, and how I achieved the center of gravity without having to redesign the whole plane. So stay tuned. So this is what the plane and the shape of the plane looks like now. I even added the extra brace in here, if you remember, to strengthen the top section. That's where the wing was going to sit. And I was hoping that the extra weight I put in here would have contributed to making it less tail heavy, but it didn't work the way I planned. Okay, so we move on. The other thing I've done is I've cut a taper off the back underside of the fuselage. So I've given it a bit more of a design shape, if you can see what I'm referring to. So I took away a bit of weight there, and believe it or not, that still wasn't enough. It didn't do the trick. It's not sufficient to get the CG right. So I have to resort to something else. I actually have to move this part further back, which is what I'm about to do now. I'm going to show you where she sits and how I get the CG exactly where I want it. Now, believe it or not, this is how I have worked with the design change to get the CG right for this plane. So I'm not doing anything more to the fuselage other than moving the power pod. Now the power pod used to be here. Now I've had to move the power pod back to absorb some of the tail heaviness that I'm experiencing with this plane and with this design. Now the only other thing that I have to work with after I make that change is the front section. I actually don't like the way this part looks now. Now I can leave it, the plane will fly, but you know, I like the plane to look reasonably well designed. I like a pretty good shape, and at the moment I'm not a fan of that look. So I'm working with making some additional cuts to the front section, which I'll show you in a moment, but I'll show you how this balances so far with the power pod moved back like that. And this is what I finally come up with. This is my final design. As you can see, there are a few extra cuts, more than I originally planned, to tell you the truth. So even with the power pod moved back the way I explained, it still wasn't nose heavy enough. I still couldn't get the CG right. I bolted the motor on, and that just added another 50 grams to the rear. I thought, well, I can't keep moving the power pod to the rear. I didn't want the wing to sit in the middle of the plane. That was not the intention of this design. So I've cut out a few extra holes. As you can see, I've cut out all that extra foam from the main wing, something I never thought I would do to one of these Experimental Airlines wings, arm and wing. And I did the same to the fuselage, the rear section there. I needed the extra weight removed. So I cut out those holes, cut out those squares, and that's the end result. Now, suffice to say, it's nobody's fault but mine. It's the type of foam board I'm using, and in Australia our foam board is just really bad, I have to say. It weighs more than it should, and in another video that I've already done, I think I've shown you how I'm using the same Australian foam board, but I'm taking the paper completely off. That's a 50% plus saving in weight there alone. So I never thought I'd actually cut through the arm and wing to do this, to achieve what I have to do, but I have. And that's the end result. I mean, it looks quite effective. It's a bit different. I'm not overly happy with having to do all that. And believe it or not, the plane still weighs well over a kilo. It weighs, I don't know, 1.3 kilo, so 1,300 grams. Then I've got to put the battery in it, so there's another, 1,400, maybe 1,450. I'm not happy. This is not what I expected. This is not how I wanted this project to turn out, but it's been a fantastic journey. I wouldn't change any of the techniques I've used to build this other than removing the paper away from the foam board to achieve at least a 50% weight saving overall. So if we go by those figures, I said it was about 1,400 grams plus or minus. This would simply be a 700 gram plane, which is what it should be. That's what the Experimental Airlines Axon version of the plane was weight-wise. So I don't know if I'm actually going to fly this because I've got no wheels. I'm going to have to throw it. I don't really want to throw a 1.4 kilogram airplane into the air. And I think I'm going to have to change the motor also. That's designed to push a 600-700 gram airplane through the air, not a plane that weighs double the weight. So this is the end result of my Let's Build a Plane series. As I said, I would not change any of the Experimental Airlines techniques that I've learnt, and I wouldn't expect anyone else to either, but I have found a lot of other tricks of the trade along the way. And the first one is I'm going to remove, and I am removing, the paper from the foam board. So it's actually like using Depron, but it's not Depron. So my battery, my receiver goes in there. That makes up the weight I needed in the nose section. So I'm just showing how the battery would fit underneath there. I do have a lid or a hatch on top of that section so you don't see it. I guess it's not absolutely necessary, but I have been making a lot of modifications to this overall design, and the weight of the plane has caused me to do that. Now I'm sure I'm just giving the okay there that the weight, the CG, is exactly where it should be based on that now. Now I don't really want to fly a plane that's got deliberately cut sections out of it like that. I mean, it looks reasonably effective, but I have taken away the strength and rigidity by doing that. So in a crash situation, I don't expect this plane to last. I even had to put supports inside the leading edge there when I cut out the sections in the main wing so that the leading edge wouldn't cave in if it hit the ground in a particular way. So those reinforcements actually work. Now I've covered the holes or the cutouts with clear packing tape. But for me personally, the weight of the plane is higher than expected, still much higher than expected. I don't really think I've achieved the overall weight saving I was hoping for by taking and cutting those chunks out the way I have. But it was worth a try. I had to try something. Otherwise, this plane would have weighed 1,600 grams or more. And that's without a landing gear. So it's been trials and tribulations for me. I've learned a hell of a lot along the way. If you don't use the right materials, whether it's foam, whether it's balsa, whether it's plywood, you can end up with a plane that is much heavier than it needs to be. And sometimes it's too easy to put reinforcements in all the right and wrong areas because you want the plane to last. You don't want it to disintegrate as soon as it hits the ground in a particular way. I'm not saying in a crash, but sometimes a bit of a rough landing can ruin the aircraft as well. But anyway, I'm going to decide whether or not I'm going to give this a go in terms of flying it. I don't think it's going to fly well with the existing motor. I'm going to have to put a bigger motor on it and quite possibly a bigger propeller. Now the bigger propeller means it's probably going to scrape the rear section of the fuselage, so that defeats the purpose. I may have to go with a 3-bladed prop, but then again I may have to also increase the battery power. Maybe I have to go to 4S. Now that was not my intention for this design either. So I'm thinking about a complete rebuild using the foam without the paper on it, and I'm sure I will achieve an overall weight of 600-700 grams with the motor, with the battery, with everything. And that's what it should have been. This is just a close-up of the leading edge with the reinforcement support inside to stop it from caving in when I made those cutouts. It's something I tried, and it's not something I would recommend, but it's something I tried. It's something I had to try. So I've learned now. I know what I'm not going to do next time, and I know what I am going to do next time also. And you'll see the result of that in future builds. And I think I've shown you already the result of that in one of my future builds, in one of the past videos. So as far as I'm concerned, the Let's Build a Plane series, this is part 11. It's finally over, finally completed. This is what I ended up with. Not exactly how I planned. Didn't go the way I thought it was going to go in the end. But you live and learn. This is another close-up of the fuselage with the enhancements and the changes I made to it. It's a solid aircraft, don't get me wrong, it's just too heavy. Considering that it's foam, it's definitely too heavy. I think the plane could almost be lighter had I made it out of balsa wood. So that defeats the whole purpose of using foam in the first place. But anyway, that's what she looks like. That's the final product. Yes, I'm going to cover that section at the back of the fuselage with clear packing tape. That's my Raven. This was supposed to be a derivative of the Experimental Airlines Axon. I just wanted to change it a little bit and make it my own. I think even if I had have kept the exact same shape and design of the original Axon, I don't think I would have achieved anything different weight-wise. So the design is not really the issue, it's the foam board material that I'm using. So I'm happy to make another one using the foam without the paper. But this is what my end result looks like. And yeah, thanks for watching. This is my Raven. I might throw it off a cliff on a windy day, see how she glides. I don't think I want to do anything else to it other than learn from what I've done. I'm pretty sure it's going to go straight up and probably straight down as soon as I throw it into the air. I'm not expecting it to fly. It's going to be too spongy on the controls. It's going to be underpowered. And but at least I completed it. And I now know what I want to do and what I don't want to do with future builds. And I'm also sure that I can build an exact replica all over again and ensure that it's only going to be half the weight, which is what's important here. So just some final glimpses of the main wing. This is the Experimental Airlines arm and wing. It folds in half. It's got the spar in it at the moment. And I've covered those cutouts with clear packing tape. I did reduce the weight by doing that, but it's not really a significant amount like I thought it would be. The journey has been awesome. I have been building others in between. I think you've already seen some of those videos, and I am still continuing to build others alongside this. I know exactly how I'm going to handle each new build now, and I know exactly the type of material materials I'm going to use and how I'm going to use them. So thanks for watching. Thanks for taking the journey with me. If you have any comments, I'd love to hear some feedback, and I'd love to be able to explain anything I did along the way, in case you got any questions. But that's where I'm at with this build. It's over, it's finished, it's done. The hatch just goes on top. Everything's in place, and that's my Raven. If I have a flight video coming up, I'll be sure to let you know. Okay, this is to show you the center of gravity after all the extra final adjustments I've made. So I've got the motor on in the back here. I've got the battery, the receiver, the electronic speed controller all in position. As you can see, this is the original design, the original shape I had from the very beginning. I kept with that after all those other changes I've made. The fuselage is a lot shorter, and this is how she finally balances. Have a look at this. Exactly where I want it. Not bad. I'm very, very happy with that. Now, the only other challenge I have is that the plane still weighs 1190 grams. So after all that cutting out, after all those extra adjustments, even after the final cut I showed you previously, I still made some extra changes to the front again, brought it back to its original shape, and I've managed to get it down to 1190 grams, down from 1450, which isn't too bad.